Thanks for coming, everybody. My name is Kevin Land. I work for George Washington University. This is my Google Voice number, and I always have a good time just putting that up there. I have no idea how I got lucky enough to get one like that. So I've kind of, you'll see that, Kevin the Destroyer Land, I got that nickname just recently because of some work that I did against some vendors in which I broke some appliances so badly that they had to actually be sent back to the vendor. So I do application security, and I'm a vulnerability researcher. My real title, of course, is network security systems engineer. I think places just make up titles so that they can pay you money, but that's not necessarily what you really do. Most of my work for the university with regards to Asterisk is independent research. I'm lucky enough that if I don't have anything to do for them, they allow me to actually target things that I want to. You'll see, 250 plus in the last year that I've released to different Asterisk vendors. And right now, about a week from now, I'm going to be rolling on to destroying some non-Asterisk vendors. And I'm really looking forward to that because I don't necessarily, I like Asterisk. I don't really like non-Asterisk vendors. So the talk here is 9 Sins of VOIP security. And, these are what we're going to be going through. Originally, I was going to do a really technical talk on, how vulnerabilities actually get into code, things like that. But then it became apparent to me that I think, given the audience and what would be useful for them, is things that everyone can do to actually make your systems better now, rather than having to rely on a vendor to fix. So first things, weak passwords, anonymous SIP, not updating software or known vulnerabilities. Defaults with weak security, and that's a real problem. Bad architectural decisions or design, trust issues, which is probably one of the most costly ones that you'll actually see. Misconfigurations, inattention or negligence. I mean, we'd all like to think that we pay attention to our things all the time, but too often times, a week may go by and that may just be too long, and poor or no logging. Okay, so originally, back in the old telecom days, most of the telecom vendors used passwords that were only digits, right? Usually just 4 digits. And that has kind of carried over. Some of that's changing. A lot of the different Asterisk vendors now are starting to enforce the need for using characters as well as digits, which is really good. So during this, getting ready for this talk here, I actually did some testing to find out, just how big of a problem is the only using digits, right? So I was testing basically how fast you could brute force an 8-digit password, right? So this, there's something wrong with that slide. So I was using SIP vicious, and this one here I had it just going after a 6-digit password. And it found a 6-digit password in 33 minutes. So what's interesting is I actually calculated based on that the amount of time that you can actually break, exhaustively break any 8-digit password, and it's less than 11 days. So if somebody has just one box padding on your system for less than 11 days, they can break any 8-digit password. Digit being numeric only. Alphanumeric, as long as you have even one alphanumeric character, it raises the level of complexity by an immense amount. So, excuse me, was there a question? Okay. So when you're talking about weak passwords, the fixes for it, of course, the first thing you need to do is to really modify every default password that comes on the system. And there's amazingly a lot of default passwords that you wouldn't necessarily think of. There's default passwords in AGI scripts, the different configuration files. You need to make sure that you're always using strong passwords. Okay, at least 8 characters. A lot of people have gone to using 12, and that's really good. 1 symbol is generally a good minimum, at least 1 digit. And make it something that you can remember. I put it here in the slides. Of course, there's where you can get SIP vicious from, and Xbrute, which Xbrute is actually Windows-based. Normally, I don't use Windows-based things, but that one there has been fairly good. Okay. Second one, anonymous SIP. How many people over here actually use anonymous SIP? Yeah, I thought there'd be quite a few. So anonymous SIP, technically, I like anonymous SIP because it makes it easy for people to call you. I really liked using enum and anonymous SIP until I started figuring out that every darn attack that was coming into my system was virtually because of anonymous SIP and because somebody was able to access my SIP service. So you'll see I mentioned enum here. How many people here are actually using enum? How many people here use enum for dialing 800 numbers? Has anybody here ever seen the problem with that? Yeah, so there's somebody. Okay, so there's somebody in Chicago that actually has managed to get themselves into an enum cloud so that every single 800 number will go through them. And so you have to map that out. Now, when you consider that, that's a serious vulnerability. I mean, really, that person there could very well listen in on every single call that goes through them. So if they had a large enough system, that could be a really big problem. What's that? It's something, he may be doing that, but I mean, it's really a much larger issue. I mean, the amount of money that they could steal from people by doing that, I mean, it's pretty huge. I mean, all he would have to do is essentially forward the calls onto the banks or whomever and just be a man in the middle listening to people, and it would be a really big problem. So, anonymous SIP, it opens you up to external attackers, and the bad guys are already using it. I found this one quote here on DSL reports. And this is somebody that had actually gotten contacted by the FBI. And he was telling some people about what happened with that and how much of an issue it was. Now, I don't know whether his anonymous SIP was turned on to begin with or not. But once it was on, it really allowed the attackers to begin using a system for dialing out and costing them money. So. Okay, if you can, if it's at all possible, turn off anonymous SIP. I mean, I personally only allow SIP to access to my trunks. The people that I know should be actually getting to my place. So. Right. So I'm essentially talking about when I'm talking about anonymous SIP, I'm talking about enabling SIP so that anyone can call you as long as they have access to your Yeah. So I'm talking about the asterisk implementation of SIP allowing people to dial you. Yeah. I'm not. I probably should have identified that. Yeah, my apologies for that. There are some ways in which you can allow only very specific extensions or aliases. I've left a link here in case people want to actually use it. I'm hoping that some people will get the slides after this talk, so that you'll be able to use some of these things. And there are some architectural changes that you can make in order to control some of these SIP problems. In some ways, it only trades one problem for another, and in a lot of ways with security, that happens all the time. Okay. So I don't know of any issues with session border controllers offhand, but the problem is that I haven't really tested them. A session border controller is a good idea, but because it essentially functions the same, you would have the same type of attacks capable. So, when I say that you're essentially trading one problem for another, in other words, you don't know that the problem doesn't exist with a session border controller. What you've done is say that you know that the problem exists on your one system, so you're putting something in place before it gets there. So, all right. So not updating software and having known vulnerabilities. With a lot of asterisk systems and installations, I mean, how many people have got installations out in the field that you don't necessarily have access to updating all the time? And that's fairly common. I know a lot of people that have got installations out in the field that they may be able to update remotely some things, but a lot of people don't like to do risky behavior remotely. And risky behavior would be, doing something that would update the Linux kernel, things like that. So that can be a really serious issue, because although it would be nice if you could know that something works all the time, if you're not updating a system because you're afraid of it actually not working or breaking, the attackers, unfortunately, are known to build a database of targets, and specifically a database of targets and what the target is likely running. They fingerprint people, and therefore, if they need access to your system, once a new vulnerability comes out, it's just a matter of them making an exploit and trying to exploit on everyone that they know about. I mean, it seems like that's fear, uncertainty, and doubt, but I've actually seen that happening. It's really not a good thing. So with your network, one of the things that you really need to do is, you need to penetration test your network. And if you don't have the skills to do it yourself, hire somebody else to do it. One of the things you'll find is a third party will actually look at your network different than you would. And by doing that, you'll oftentimes find vulnerabilities in your network, and sometimes design flaws in your network itself that you wouldn't have seen yourself just because you're actually too close to it. And then you'll see prepackaged exploits. How many people here are familiar with Metasploit? Okay, so Metasploit is an excellent framework for exploitation. It allows you to easily attack systems. It comes with a default set of exploits. The exploits are usually fairly old. Sometimes they actually do have very new ones in it. And it makes it easy for attackers to actually go after your systems. If you don't update your system, an attacker is going to use the exploits from Metasploit on you. It's not will they? It's just when. Okay. So, if possible, you should always schedule software updates to happen unattended, if it's possible. There are some risky things that with software updates in which you wouldn't necessarily want to do that. In that case, I usually will set up some other type of command, some type of command structure for the device, like an IPKVM that allows me to have access to it in case something really breaks. Right? Tenable Nessus. How many people here have used Tenable Nessus before? Oh, that's great. I actually used to work for Tenable, so I like the Nessus product. But